If you're looking to stay informed with the latest analysis on the stories that are shaping our world in the areas of foreign policy, national security, and domestic politics, consider becoming a member of the DSR Network. With the DSR Network podcasts, stay ahead of the curve on global affairs. Each episode across our more than 10 shows features top experts, policymakers, and thought leaders who break down complex issues into digestible, engaging conversations. From breaking news to historical context, we cover the latest topics that matter most. Whether it's the intricacies of international diplomacy, the latest in national security strategies, or the dynamics of U.S. politics, the DSR Network has you covered. Members receive an ad-free listening experience, bonus content for virtually all of our shows, an invitation to join the DSR Slack community, enhanced show notes for select podcasts, and much more. Visit thedsrnetwork.com/buy and enter code JULY2024 to receive 50% off the regular membership price for the first year or first month. That's thedsrnetwork.com/buy and code JULY2024. Thank you very much for your support.
Nine, 12, 10, 28, 2, 23.
This is Deep State Radio, coming to you direct from our super secret studio in the third sub-basement of the Ministry of Snark in Washington, D.C., and from other undisclosed locations across America and around the world.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. It's that time of the week when we talk about what's going on in politics. And oh my God, is there a lot of stuff going on in politics? But we have, for your therapeutic benefit here, the two most uplifting political analysts in America, Tara McGowan. How are you doing, Tara?
Great question, David. How are you?
Okay. Can see
we're off to a roaring start here.
This is gonna be a good one. And Simon Rosenberg, how are you?
I'm a little more chipper.
Yeah, well, I know. I read your Substack every day. This is what happens. I wake up because I have to do a fucking Substack now, and I get up at 5:30 and I read all the news because I got to think about what I'm doing, and it's all depressing and scary and complicated. And then like Simon's Substack pops in, and it's like, everything's fine. Everything is great. And I'm like, wait, what? I want to live on the planet Simon. All right. Well, let's get into that. We haven't spoken in a couple of weeks. A few things have happened then. That's all the prelude to that question I'm going to ask. Tara, hey, what do you think?
What do I think? I think that my job and our collective job as people who do not want Trump to be elected or have an authoritarian regime in America, our job has not changed at all. We are still running against Trump. Joe Biden is still the top of the ticket. Kamala Harris is still the vice president on the ticket. The threat is still enormous. And I personally just am struggling with how distracted everybody really is and the potential really, really, really disastrous consequences of that distraction in the media and among the Democratic Party, and the benefit that it is causing Trump, or providing Trump right now, I should say. So I am trying my best, my damnedest, to just stay focused on the things that I can control, the things that my team at Courier can control, and keep our eye on the ball, because we have 118 days until this election, and we can't waste one single day that we have left. And so, there's a lot that we're going to get into in this conversation, but that's where I'm at, David.
Well, yeah, sure, Tara. That was a good answer. Very politics. I mean, she didn't really address the elephant in the room, though, leaving that entirely to you.
Sarah and I are a good team. And so there sometimes she does the heavy lifting. Sometimes I got to do it. And listen, let me tell you where I think things are from Simon world right now. So first of all, we started the week with very good news, which is that France, like the rest of Europe, stared down fascism and prevented a fascist takeover of one of our most closest allies. Fascism had a bad summer in Europe, the way that it's been having a bad summer here in the United States, particularly since Dobbs, but certainly since 2018. And I still think that matters almost more than anything else that's going on, because this consistent pattern that we've seen is that when voters go vote, not when they answer polls, because the fascists were supposed to win the European elections and they didn't, and the fascists were supposed to win the French elections and they didn't, and the fascists were supposed to win the midterm elections in 2022 and they didn't, and they were supposed to win New York 3 and they didn't. And I think this basic dynamic is that the most important issue in Western politics today is the fear and opposition to the rise of fascism, and that consistently, when voters have to go vote, they make a better choice. And I think it's important for us, also the listeners here, is that I think we should stop referring to them as the Republican Party. I think we should call it the Fascist Party and make it capitalized, right? So capital T, capital F, capital P. I'm going to refer to them now from now on as the Fascist Party because they are, and it's a conceit to call them the Republican Party. I don't think it's accurate any longer. They're not the Republican Party. They don't believe in the Republic. And they've abandoned all of the ideals of Reagan and Lincoln. Second is, in terms of polling this week, where polling is in the United States is the election is still very close and competitive. We've probably fallen back 2 to 3 points, but no more than that. In the 538 forecast, which is different than the day-to-day polling, Biden's at 270 today in their forecast and winning the election in the forecast. That's different from current polling. So my view is this is still a winnable election, and that we have to put our heads down, as Tara said, and go do the work. And then finally, I want to just say that in terms of the question.
Well, you got to get to the question sooner. Everybody's like, what? But the question.
I know, but so here's how I see it. Right, I think that I think we can win this election with Joe Biden. I think we can win this election with another candidate like Kamala Harris. I think that we, and that's really important, right? That and as Tara said, that's why what Tara was saying is that our work hasn't changed, our mission hasn't changed. We still have to go out and beat the bad guys, and that taking a couple of weeks off is not a good idea. And so where I view things now, David, is what we've learned from polling in the last 10 days. Number one is that the election's close and competitive. Number two is that Kamala is showing far greater strength on the ticket or as an independent candidate than I think any of us would have imagined, frankly, given the sort of the general vibe about her in the party. And I think this is super important. We have a lot more data about her than we did 2 weeks ago, and the data is largely encouraging. So, for example, in the Washington Post poll today, which had Biden and Trump at 46, she's beating Trump 49-47. That's consistent with other polling. There's some polling that has her way back, but there's been encouraging polling. And then finally, I think the most important data that we saw today in the Washington Post poll, which I think was a really important, interesting, well-wrought poll, was that 56% of Democrats think that Joe Biden should step aside. And this is hard information to hear. It's consistent with lots of other data. And what it means is this idea that's in the chatter that this is kind of an elite, the problems with Biden's performance and his age and his fitness and his health is not an elite concern. It is an everyday concern of our party and our family. And we have to take that seriously. And that's why the debate and discussion we're having right now is appropriate. We shouldn't be fearful of debates and deliberation. That's a hallmark of democracies. And I think that, this conversation about what is the best course is hard, it's difficult, it's painful, but it's necessary. And, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think if Joe Biden decides to stay in this and we all rally behind him, I'm going to be at the front of the line going to fight and make sure we win. I'm still behind Joe Biden 100%. But I also am more confident that if he chooses, because of his age and because now the election's gotten harder and he's going to have to work harder, and he's not a young guy, that if he chooses to pass the baton to Kamala, I'm also have much more confidence that we can win that election too. And if we all rally behind Kamala. In that polling, on the question of would you be okay if Biden passed the baton to Kamala, overwhelming majority of Democrats said yes. So now the issue is that I think we have a lot more data, and we also got all this remarkable economic data today. Biden's had a tremendous week at NATO, right? The party is in good shape objectively. We're not in good shape internally. And what's happened and what Tara said, I think I just want to echo, is that we know this week the U.S. government took down a Russian botnet. We know the intelligence community warned the United States that Russia is coming in to intervene in the election on Trump's behalf again. We learned that Iran has been playing a major role in fomenting discord around Israel-Gaza. The foreign actors, this is important for every person who loves democracy to hear. They want us to be fighting with each other. They want us to sow discord. Do not do it, right? We have to stay together at all costs. When you fight with other Democrats, you are doing Vladimir Putin's work for them. And we can be respectful of the president, respectful of our party, respectful of our leaders, respectful of one another, get through this period, this bumpy period for the next 2 weeks, and go out and kick MAGA's ass in November. And I think that's where we have to be psychologically as a family, is that we're going through a bumpy patch. We're going to get through it, and then we're going to go win this election.
Thank you, Dad. I'm with you. I'm with you. The reason I like talking to you guys is I agree with both of you guys. I mean, the reality is we are where we are. And so, Tara, where we are is a challenging moment. But, I want to challenge something you said and get your response to it, which is, it's bad to be distracted right now. And I want to make the reverse case, that it's actually good to be distracted right now as opposed to being distracted later. And the way I make the case is a lot of the questions that are swirling around Biden were out there to begin with. Biden has kind of been stuck, if you look at the polls, at a certain level, hasn't been able to break out against arguably the worst candidate in the history of candidates, like the worst person who ever had a high office. And recent polling has shown some weaknesses that are of concern in the Cook report, moving states, in the direction, 6 states, battleground states, in the direction of the Republicans. Data out of Wisconsin showing Tammy Baldwin running 5 points ahead of the Republican and Biden 5 points behind the Republican. Data out of New York that sort of makes it into a battleground state-ish. So those are all warning signs. And, there are 2 things you can do. You can sort of say, oh, this is where we are. Let's just forge ahead, everybody. Or you can say, well, we got 4 months. What can we do about that now to make sure that we win? Because the stakes are so high. And if it takes a couple of weeks of distraction, but we end up where Simon says we're going to end up, or should end up, which is united behind whomever the candidate is, maybe that's for the best. What do you think?
I don't disagree with any of that. That's why I caveated my original answer in that this is how I am feeling personally. As somebody who has worked at the intersection of media and politics and watched the demise of our legacy media and a lot of things that they are doing that I think are very unhelpful, I agree vehemently with Simon's statement, and that you just sort of echoed, David, that debate is very healthy. Discourse is healthy. It's important. It's critical. It is also up to one person alone, whether or not Joe Biden stays at the top of the ticket, and that is Joe Biden. And I understand that that increased pressure and people coming out and calling on him to do this. But even on this conversation, we have said, if he makes the decision, he has, as of right now, made the decision and reinforced it and repeated it every single day since the debate that he is staying in this race. So I understand there is a lot of activity and a lot of conversation happening in our circles and outside of our circles, trying to influence him to change that decision. I don't actually care, because I do believe we can win either way, and yet we won't win if we aren't unified. And so that is why this does need to get tied up more quickly. It has to. If he is not going to budge on this question, something needs to give for us to unify again against the common threat, because the media's obsession with this, that will continue because they love the ability to have this open question and engagement, is pretty infuriating to me, because we did not see outlets like the New York Times that came out and called for Biden to step down, call for Trump, a convicted felon, to step down. The double standards cannot be ignored, and I think that they are very dangerous as well. So I am not weighing in on whether or not I think Joe Biden should step down, because that's his decision, and we need to win no matter what, and I believe we can and win no matter what, and the greatest threat to that currently at this moment is having real division occur within our party and our side. And so that's where I don't know how to fix that problem. I don't know that any of the pundits that are the most loud about this are contributing to helping us get closer to a solution or further from one. And that's sort of what I was articulating. But I do believe that whether or not Joe Biden changes his mind to step down, Kamala Harris is on this ticket. And that's another thing that I think is sort of a unproductive conversation that I think is starting to quiet a little bit more about all the other folks that might or should be on the ticket. She's incredibly strong. I agree with everything Simon said. I have also seen private and public polling data recently that shows that she is also largely undefined among the American people and electorate. And so there's enormous opportunity to even increase her visibility and support and favorability, which, aside from lifting her profile and support among voters, and especially younger voters and voters of color who do gravitate towards her when they know more about her, it lifts the entire ticket with Joe Biden on it as well. And so I see that as a really important focus area of our side, regardless of what Biden decides to do. And that's certainly where I am putting my energy, and where our newsrooms are putting their energy, is introducing and defining Kamala Harris, a historic first woman and woman of color vice president of this country, to the American people, because regardless of this decision, she will be on this ticket. I am very confident.
If you're loving this show, then it's clear you value unique perspectives on the issues shaping your world. That's why you should check out The Intelligence, the free award-winning daily news podcast from The Economist and its global network of correspondents. And with a subscription to Economist Podcasts Plus, you can also get access to special limited series such as The Modi Raj, a brand new show introducing you to India's enigmatic strongman, plus The Economist's suite of in-depth weekly shows on business, China, American politics, and tech, all for just a few dollars a month. Search for Economist Podcasts Plus to sign up and start listening.
Yeah, no, there's no scenario for the future of the Democratic Party where Kamala Harris doesn't play a big role. If she's on the ticket, if she's the candidate now, if she's the candidate in the future. I've written a couple of things about this in the past couple of weeks, and one of the things that I wrote, I did a little bit of research, the kind you can do in like 5 minutes on Wikipedia, and I looked at Democratic presidential candidates since the middle of the last century. In all but one case, every vice president who's been on a ticket, who's been a vice president under a Democrat, has been the candidate subsequent to that. All but one case. That was Truman's vice president. But everybody else is. So she's going to be in the mix, and that's a good thing, because I think she's very, very strong. Now, you talked about pundits, and you kind of like it. You kind of wanted to gargle after you used the word, and in the past couple of weeks, the term pundit has really gotten beat up a lot, and so have the pundits. And you know how I know this? Well, because I got beat up a lot, and because I was one of the people who wrote a column, actually several, right after the debate, which I said I think Joe Biden should think about stepping down. I'll support anybody, but I think it's something he should think about. And I also wrote one for the New Republic saying he should pass the torch to Kamala Harris. And the amount of acrimony on from Democrats on this issue, particularly in Twitter, which is just an untenable place to be, has been awful. And the healing that Simon is talking about, you're talking about, is going to be key. But Simon, we still have got to come to grips with the reality that every day, I see one conversation in Twitter, but when I talk to people on the Hill, this issue is unresolved. When I talk to people around, sort of political people, this issue is open. And I'm getting emails at night going, this many senators are going to sign a letter to, Biden and so forth. And so the question is not what should we do? We should all unite about the Democrat. But I think people want to have some sense of what's going to happen.
Yeah, let me just make 2 points, or two or 3 points. One is, we got the inflation numbers today. Inflation dropped in June. Inflation went down in June. Inflation has been 2.1% over the last 6 months, hitting the Fed target right in the bullseye. The jobs report we had last Friday was another strong, robust jobs report. Wages continue to rise. Flows to the border have plummeted. Crime has plummeted in the United States. Overdoses, I just saw this data today, have plummeted in the United States. America is good. Joe Biden has been a good president. We're far better off. This is going to be central to whatever happens to us, and we cannot lose sight, just in the way as Tara mentioned, we can't lose sight of the unbelievable historical ugliness of Donald Trump and the threat that he represents to the country. And I just want to say provocatively that I think that it is still remarkable to me as a political professional that the Republicans came out of that debate and they disappeared their candidate for 12 days. There is no scenario where that is a good thing for them. If they believe that the best thing for their party was taking Donald Trump off the stage, it means they have no confidence in him and his performance. This idea that this somehow was shrewd and savvy is some of the biggest bullshit that I've ever heard since I've been in politics over 30 plus years. They are terrified of his performance. He went way off script in the debate. He was a disaster. He was, as I use the term, batshit crazy on national television for 90 minutes. He was batshit crazy in his performance the other night in Florida, where he wandered down the street to another golf course. They couldn't even bring him into a battleground state. He hasn't been in a battleground state in 2 weeks. And so I just want to say that one of the things we have to keep in mind at every moment is that he's an historically awful, weak, and terrible candidate, and we're going to beat him, right, if we come together and mount the kind of campaign that we can. I will say that Joe Biden now, if he wants to win the election, he is our nominee, he is our candidate, I am behind him 1,000,000%, right, is that he's got to deal with the reality that the perceptions of his fitness and health have eroded dramatically, and that the campaign's going to have to change. If he wants to win, he's going to have to really, in a way that they were, I think, not anticipating, frankly, that the most important issue for them, in addition to denigrating Trump, is going to be establishing his strength and his strong man, a strong leader, weak leader to mention that we've talked about here before on this show. And the campaign's going to have to adjust. And I think that their original or early version of that this week, which was been to dismiss these concerns that people have about his age and his health, was a mistake. And I think it actually hurt the campaign. I think it made, because what they were saying is, this is not a big deal, move on. I had people in my community telling me to shut up and stop talking about this, when 56% of Democrats think he should step down. 50% or so of Democrats think that he's not fit to serve as president. If he wants to win the election, he's going to have to get those numbers way up in the next 6 to 8 weeks to put himself back into contention to win this thing. It's a doable thing. It's a doable thing, right? Because he's had a really good week. The foreign leaders are saying he's been amazing in these meetings, right? He had a really good AFL-CIO meeting yesterday. But the campaign has changed. Our job has changed. His campaign, and I think the campaign, frankly, has stumbled a little bit out of the box on this, and they're going to have to readjust as we get through this week. He needed to get through NATO, right? And he's done that. He's had a great week. He's been the leader of the free world, David, as you've talked about a lot. And so I remain optimistic that we have paths forward here to go win. But to the point about you, I want to just put an exclamation point on this. The reaction that you're getting on Twitter, we have to recognize that 50 to 75% of that was probably inauthentic and inorganic. There is no question to me that based on my Twitter feed this week, that the Russians have moved from France and have now entered the chat here in the United States. And I think that one of the positions they're taking is that they're defending Biden. And one group is defending Biden, another group is attacking Biden, right? They're sowing discord. And you shouldn't take, David, there's a difference between Democratic accounts and Democratic people. And I think that, yes, you've been attacked. I got attacked this week and everything else. I have came to believe as early as Monday that we were now seeing a degree of coordination in inorganic activity on the internet to sow discord inside the Democratic family, to recreate the Bernie bros and all this stuff that happened before that they've already done in order to keep our party divided. And that's why we have to recognize that we're going to get through this over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be super bumpy. We don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But we have two good choices at the other end, not two bad ones. And then we're going to come out of this together, unify, and go win this election.
Totally agree. And by the way, on our podcasts and in other venues, I've said the same thing. I believe that this is not entirely inorganic, but it is largely inorganic. And a lot of it has to do with the Russians. And one of the reasons I concluded this was it sounds like it does. But, Tara, I want to just go to one difficult point again, but, we'll move on then from that. But, I just saw a tweet that the Democratic senators and staff have gotten a memo just recently from the campaign saying there's no indication that anyone else will outperform the president versus Trump. Hypothetical polling of alternatives is always unreliable. The only candidate who, that we know anything about is Biden. It's denial, denial, denial. Stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. And I don't hear anybody going, we got our wheels stuck in the mud for the past couple of months. We've had some problems. Maybe it's not that Biden just had a bad debate performance. It's maybe Biden had a bad debate. People were concerned about his age. Things haven't been going forward. The stakes are so high. Maybe something's wrong and we got to fix it. So I don't hear a lot of listening from the people around the president. Maybe that's going on. What do you think?
So agree. I am not of the camp of blind loyalty either, and I don't think that is helpful. I think the polling numbers that Simon keeps referencing about 56% of Democrats think that Biden should step down is important, because I think that the campaign in the White House were leaning heavily on the polls not shifting very much in the few days after the debate. I also think there's something else that's worth pointing out here, and this is not my suggestion, but I very much believe another candidate could win. Many other candidates on our side could win if they were the top of the ticket. And I believe that this very, very, very disconcerting and frenetic moment we are in, and the country is in, and our politics are in right now, actually can have a great deal of silver lining, because it is waking a lot of people up and increasing engagement. And the folks on our side that are calling for Biden to step down, and who are, many of them, incredibly emotional and reactive as well, they feel that way because they understand the stakes as well and do not want in any situation Trump to be able to win this election. So it is all coming from a very good place. I believe that genuinely. And I also think that there is an enormous amount of time to leverage the opportunity if there were a different person at the top of the ticket, including Kamala, who I believe that it would be, or another candidate, to actually increase enthusiasm, because we have not had enthusiasm on our side really this entire cycle, outside of Hopium and Simon. And I'm so grateful for that he has kept folks engaged and enthused. But frankly, there was not a whole lot of new information for most Americans, especially people under 40, who I'm most concerned about in terms of their engagement with this election, with the debate. Really not at all. They already didn't like either option. They really already knew that Joe Biden was old. It wasn't really new information. In fact, I think it was mostly new information for a lot of elites that felt that they had been lied to, or that they had been protected from Biden's aging in general. And so I think that what was hard before the debate is hard still among under 40 voters. And actually, changing up the ticket could actually give a massive opportunity to Democrats to tell a different story and engage and enthuse voters who were planning to tune out or sit out this election. And there was already also in the Democratic Party a sort of resignation and hope almost that this would be a low turnout election because that would give Biden the best odds of winning. And we have not had a low turnout election since after the 2016 election when Trump won. I don't foresee that. And I think that it could also create a much better environment for a very high turnout enthused electorate if we did have a change. But again, that's not a suggestion because I think we can win either way. But I do see a silver lining to that if it happens. It just feels very, very above my pay grade. And so I don't spend a lot of time on it.
So we've got 7 minutes left. So let me ask you a tough question. And in fact, this is a question that I haven't really seen addressed anywhere in the media. We all hate the media now, or by a pundit, but we hate pundits. It's a very hard time to.
Yeah, we created a new show. We don't hate it. We had to want like the other media. Really
yeah. No, we hate them all. We hate Courier Newsroom. We hate the media.
You're like a mini Rupert Murdoch, David. Like,
as many as it gets, believe me.
Yeah,
compared to the Titans like Tara. Anyway, here as we look ahead, at some point between now and hopefully 2 weeks from now, but certainly before the Democratic Convention, we've got to pivot away from this debate. And we got to pivot into something. And so I just want to, off the top of your head, Simon and then Tara, what do the Democrats have to do to go from, let's just call it a healthy debate that produces the same candidate who now is all of a sudden energized by being, well, they counted me out, but I'm back. And, he's kind of rocky, or somebody new. What happens then in the party? What does an average person then do?
Well, as Tara said earlier, we shouldn't be waiting for that. And in Hopium, right, we have candidates and party committees that we're raising money for and that we're, volunteering.
And you're doing an amazing job, by the way. The amount of money you guys raised in June was exceptional, amazing.
It surprised me, to be honest. And I'm going to North Carolina next week. I'm doing an event with Anderson Clayton in North Carolina. I'm canvassing on Saturday morning. I'm going to be out there sweating it out down in Raleigh next weekend. And I've been traveling around the country in recent weeks. I went to Wisconsin, and I just think that there isn't really an option of. As I was saying to my community, that we needed to rest up during the 4th of July break and then come back and be ready to rumble this week. Well, maybe we need to be ready to rumble on Monday, right? Once the Republican convention starts and that awful thing is going to be thrust in our face. But we can't take any more time off. We will it will be devastating for us if people stop giving money and stop doing the work. The Biden campaign admitted in the last few days that they've lost a little bit of their high dollar donations, but the low dollar stuff is still staying very strong for them. And I think, look, one of the things I was very encouraged about is that Julia Rodriguez the campaign manager sent out an email yesterday to the Democratic grassroots saying, we're ratcheting up our grassroots operation and we recognize that all of you are our superpower. And she needed to say that. It was really important that the campaign acknowledge that the way that we win now isn't through television ads and the traditional campaign apparatus. It's several million people going to work, and becoming amplifiers for our narratives and stories and giving money and being partners in the fight, not donors to the cause. And that's why I would just say to all of you who are listening is that the difference between us having a fascist takeover in the United States and having a democracy is all the work that we're going to do in the next 4 months. It's not about what Joe Biden's going to do or Kamala Harris or what Barack Obama's going to do. It's what we're going to do. And I think that what I just want all of you to realize is that you're on the front lines of the most important political battle in probably 70, 80 years, right, since the end of World War II. And, and how do you want to go conduct yourself? I have made the choice and I'm going to leave it all on the playing field and work my ass off every day. And I want to encourage everyone to join me, but I also want to encourage everyone to think about being a leader and not just a worker. And what I mean by that, and you said dad at the beginning, David, we need to exhibit, our party is being tested right now, and failure is not an option. And we have to do everything we possibly can to recognize and be mature that this is a complicated moment. We will have a resolution of it very soon. And people need to get ready to go work like they've never worked, because our job got a little bit harder in the last couple of weeks. Not insurmountable, but a little bit harder. And we just got to go to work. And I think you're going to see party leaders like Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and others playing a major role in whatever happens next, in speaking to the family and bringing the family together. But I do think one critical thing is, if Joe Biden wants to be the candidate and get through to the other side, he has to more, as Tara said, and as I've said earlier, acknowledge these concerns and not dismiss them. And I think this is critical to the healing that is going to have to happen, because there are a lot of people in our family and in my Hopium community who are angry that Biden's being challenged and are sticking to their guy. And so I think Joe has to acknowledge and give space for his own supporters to realize there are other Democrats who are worried, and that's okay. And that I have a solution for it. I have a plan. We have a way of getting through to the other side. But this idea that, I think part of what's happening now is the way the Biden campaign is handling this, it's encouraging inter-party fighting as opposed to encouraging inter-party resolution. And that's why we've got to get to a better place on this. But I want to conclude, because I want Tara to finish, is that I think what Tara said is really important. This agita we all have is going to eventually get channeled into the most powerful democratic political machine that we've ever seen, and we're going to go kick their ass.
That's an excellent point. And by the way, to everybody who says, but, we're losing time here, that French election that Simon's talking about took place in 2 weeks. The British election took place in just a few weeks longer than that. Most countries do it in a lot less time. Tara, you get to wrap this up with your, what do we do? Where do we go from?
Surprisingly, I agree with Simon on these points. And I think this is why I keep talking about the focus. It's not to say that debate doesn't matter. It's not just to say that the decision doesn't matter. But I will remind folks that Democrats didn't really win the last number of elections since 2016. Democrats and the American people ensured that Republicans and Trump lost. And that is still the job and the mandate. And that is still what we need to do. And I want to harken back to what Simon said at the top of this conversation, which is that we are running against a fascist party. We are running against a fascist agenda. This is not hyperbole. We cannot give them more opportunities than they are already taking in this moment. And so while that debate and discourse is important and who's on the ticket matters to some degree, this is not about Joe Biden. And I will say the one thing that really has frustrated me, because I am not without opinion or feelings about this. Everybody has them. But in his conversation with George Stephanopoulos on Friday, what I really wanted to see from the president was some humility. To Simon's point, acknowledging the concerns and the questions are legitimate, acknowledging that where they are coming from is not doubting Joe Biden or his legacy or his incredible impact he and his administration have had on this country, because it is historic and his legacy will stand the test of time on that. It's not people second guessing that. It's because they are so fearful of what happens if we lose this election and that we cannot take any risks of our own making in this election. And we did not see that humility. And I hope that we do see it from him and from the campaign, regardless of his ultimate decision here, because that is breeding more discontent and mistrust at a time where all of our focus has to be on the much, much larger threat. And so I do hope that the campaign and the president change their tune if they decide to stick this out, and we will have their back in doing that. But you have to meet people where they are emotionally. That is something I think Trump understands very well and taps into. And it's going to be what we need to be unified. We need a leader who unifies us, but it isn't about the leader. truly, it isn't just about the candidate. It's about all of us, and it's about the values we espouse and what we need to prevent with the work that we all need to be doing every single day. And I know that this community is doing that work. And so I only say the focus piece so much because it helps me get through the day, because the work is still there and there's so much to be done.
Excellent. You guys were both excellent. You said exactly what I had hoped that you would say. The objective has got to be unity. The objective has got to be coming together and winning, because the stakes are so high. Trump must be defeated, but also because in a democracy, the top job is not president. It's voter. We're in charge. We get to make the choice. We have to come together to make that choice, and we have to do it wisely. Situations like this can inform that decision, help us make the right choice. But it's also going to take work, and it's going to take what Simon talked about also, which is leadership. That's why it's so good to have you guys back every so often. I hope it's more and more frequently, the more closely we get to the election. But until then, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everybody, for listening.